Hi, this is JordyW, and today I'm going to show you how to flip a melodic sample, personalize it, and make it your own, and how to come up with the more sophisticated beats. So for this one, I've started with this sample from Pvlace. So for the pack, let me go to my packs on Splice and go to the pack originally is called Pvlace Michelangelo of Melodic Volume 1. If you are not familiar with Pvlace, maybe you want to check it on YouTube or listen to some of his production. He is super known for coming up with original melodies, a lot of fire stuff. So yeah, let me solo the sample. I will try to loop this section first. And let me deactivate my audio effects track so you listen to the original melody we are starting with. So yeah, starting with the processing effects, we have this one knob wether from Waves plugin to add some reverb and delays to our sample. I really like this plugin since it's super simple. It's like dumb, but it does the work when you are trying to come up with something on the spot and fast. Later, have an EQ8 from Ableton Live to cut some of the low frequencies and make it more clean, I guess. We have next Retro Color, RC20 from Retro Color, and we have a little bit of distortion, some wobble, and some magnetic to make this sound a little bit vintage and gritty. Next, we have the halftime plugin, and what I'm doing with the halftime, instead of using it on 100%, I'm just adding a 38% mix to add that sub layer or those sub frequencies that make the sample more dark. So if I deactivate my halftime and let's listen to the sample. If I activate my halftime, you can hear it's like we added kind of a moog or like a bass, but without doing that. Is the sub layer or the layer from the sample playing an octave lower that add that impression. I won't expand on the shaper box since this is one of the technique within the variation. I just wanted to show you what I did with the sample. So once I had that, I done the processing to my sample. This will be playing on the intro and on the breakdown. Later, I tried to come up with a variation which is the purpose of this tutorial. So the first idea you might want to do is instead of using the halftime with a 38% dry rate, maybe put it on 100% and listen to the effects. Most of the time it won't sound amazing, but for this one I think it does the work and we have our first variation. So let's solo our sample. So yeah, I think it sounds amazing. Once you have that, you might want to freeze it and extract it so you have a first variation. I'm not doing that within this beat, so let me go to 38% back. So yeah, we have our first variation or our first idea on how to process a sample. The second one is this section. So for this one, I used the Shaper Box. The Shaper Box is a super amazing plugin. It contains, when you open the plugin, you have this interface. So you have a time, a filter, a panning effect, volume automation one, and a width for the stereo width. Within this sample, I'm using the time to add some stutters to my sample. So you can choose within this presets. I'm using the second one, and I'm playing it on 100%. You can see my settings here. Next, I've decided to add some filter automation, some cutoff frequency. You can achieve the same effect within the auto filter plugin from Ableton Live, but I'm using this one since it's super handy and I'm using it on 12%. So without further ado, let me first get you to hear the sample and I will try to play with the plugin just to show you what I did here. So you can hear the stutter effect. We are repeating some snippet and some section from the sample over and over again to create some variation. So if I open my shaper box, now we'll show you if we changed some of the presets, how our sample will sound. So yeah, it's super fun as a plugin. You can experiment and go crazy with it. Actually, I kept it simple, so I'm using the stutter tool, a little bit of filter automation, and that's it. So as you might see within the colors, we have our first variation or our first dry sample, the original one. Next, we have this stutter effect. And for the third variation, I used the same stutter effect, but I reversed the sample. You can do this within Ableton Live. So we have the same sample reversed, and I added the shaper box on top of it. And we are back to our second variation. As you might see, it's super simple to make your beat sounds more sophisticated while we are using the same sample. So once I've had this four section, let's say, I rearranged them within the beat just to make it more interesting and catch the attention of the listener, I guess. You can achieve that within the automation from Ableton Live. So as you might see here, I have an automation envelope. We have the plugin, the halftime plugin activated within the intro, the breakdown, and the outro, since this section don't contain any of the bass elements. So we don't have any frequencies clashing with our 808. As for the shaper box, let me go to the device on. I activated it here to have the second variation all throughout the end of the first verse and the same within the second verse. So this way, with your plugin, with your automation envelope within Ableton Live, you can easily create a lot of variation to your samples. So once I had that, I've decided to add another layer to my sample, which is a super simple layer. We have this patch from Omnisphere called Ambient London from Studio Plug. I highly advise you to check their preset. They sound amazing. And I've decided to play a couple of notes, simple ones, just to accentuate my sample and make it more interesting. So if I solo the first two elements, let me solo here. So yeah, the pads within the background adds a lot of ambience and make the sample sounds great. So that's it for my melodies, I guess. I mainly relied on adding some variation and extra top layer with the pads, and that's it. So if we move to the drums, we have our first layer here with the Murda hi-hat, again from Splice. And I'm mainly using Murda one-shots for this beat. We have our hi-hats here, some EQ8, and we are playing 8th notes with some 16th notes, some variation on the velocity, and a little bit of pitch automation or pitch variation to make it more interesting. Next, I have this layer with my snare on the third beat. Once I had that, I added this fill snare, I guess, or side snare. And roll at the end. Next, let's move to the kick. Nothing crazy. I'm adding a little bit of glue compression to me with the soft clipping on to make it more distorted and more compressed, and some EQ8 at the end, the limiter, to make sure we are not clipping or nothing crazy is going on. Next, I move to the 808. I have the G minor scale from Ableton Live, a sample from Murda Beats, a little bit of saturation to add some distortion, an R bass from Waves plugin to add some sub frequencies to my sample, and finally an EQ8 with low cutoff or high cutoff, sorry, to cut some of the high frequencies, and a little bit of low since we don't need the mud on those frequencies. So if I solo my 808, yeah, that's it for my pattern. Next, let me see what we have. We have this snippet of a sample again from Pvlace with some hi-hat rolls. And finally, if I'm not mistaken, we have another layer, this one. Let me put it here. Some crashes and weird sound that I liked. So yeah, those mainly the two samples. So if I solo all of these drum elements with the 808, let's listen to what we have. Again, nothing crazy, but super effective, some foundational element. Next, I've decided to add this vocal one shot. I added some EQ, some reverb to add this UK kind of influence with this future garagey sound. I'm not. And finally, I have this vocal shouts to handle the transition. Sorry, let me solo the layer within the context of the track. super bouncy stuff. So that's it for the beat. And what I wanted to show you next, this is another great technique to come up with a whole new beat. So luckily for me, with this sample, you can find some MIDI clips. So if I go to my splice, let me show you the Pvlace Michelangelo of melody. So this is the pack. You can go here, audit some sounds, and there is a MIDI section actually. And I found the original MIDI clip for this sample. So if I play it, I have it here. And I've loaded a couple of Omnisphere here. I want to expand on. Let me first play the sample and I will explain later, I guess. So this is the original sample or the original MIDI clip. As you might see, we have a couple of chords here and we have our top melody. So what I did here is I've decided to remix or come up with my own pattern for this beat. So I've loaded this first Omnisphere presets called Guitar Ogle, which is a guitar. And I stripped down the MIDI clip and I'm just playing the chords. And I've decided to add a variation to the chord. So what I did is, as you might see here, I stripped down the top line here. And for the chords, I flipped those notes, any base of the chords, to create an inversion on those chords. So I came up with a new pattern. It sounds like this. Let me deactivate the shaper box here. It's acting weirdly. Yeah, I'm glitching a bit. Let me get rid of this layer just to leave some room for our... Let me play it without the shaper box. I'm deleting it here. Going crazy. Sorry about that. Sorry about the glitching for whatever reason. So let me first freeze this. So yeah, what I did is I stripped down the melodic elements or the MIDI clip. I came up with the new chords and I added another layer with the flute with my own melody. So this is a great handy way to come up. If you have the chance to find the MIDI clip for this section, you might want to experiment, strip down the sample or get rid of it and come up with your own new beat. So this is what I've decided to do here. I played my chords on the guitar and I came up with a flute section, another one. Sorry, it's taken a little bit of time to freeze my track. Done. Yeah, it's not gonna do it. So let me first solo our flute element. Yeah, I found the original issue, I guess. So this is our flute. If you can listen with it with the chords. So we went from this to this. Within the context of the beat with the drums and the bass. So yeah, you get the idea. My computer is going crazy, but just as simple as that, I can create, or I created my own beat within doing any reference to the original sample. So you can go crazy with this technique. You might want to flip, put other chords, maybe add your bells, a vocal sample. So you have the foundation with the MIDI clips, the idea, and you can create a new whole section of it. I hope you learned something from this tutorial. Sorry about the glitching from my Ableton Live, since I'm processing my vocals and my microphone through Adobe Audition and my capture software, and I'm having Photoshop open, so it's going all over the place. Thank you for watching. Let me know within the comments if you prefer the first beat or the second one with my own flute and guitar. And again, let me know if you want me to cover any other technique, or you want me to expand on any other section within this one. And thank you again for listening, and stay tuned. I'll be posting more tutorials, and peace.